Can all join palms and repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. Keeping the palms joined. Put palms down. All right, good evening, everybody. Nice to see you all here. Thanks for showing up. You're like bundled up for the snow. We're so spoiled here. Yeah? 3 days in a row of 50 degrees, and we've shut down the city completely. Yeah. Super spoiled. Yeah. The heat just got turned on, so it'll kick in about an hour, so we'll be fine. Don't worry. Yeah. Yeah. Good to see you all here. Thanks for showing up. Always a fun, I think, practice when you begin to explore the nature of your own mind, which is really what this practice is about. You know, what do you think all day long? That's really what it comes down to, in its simplest form. What do we think all day? And very often we're so busy doing stuff that we don't take time to stop and think. We're just kind of on autopilot. And then at the end of the day, we kind of crash and burn, and we look at something to lift us up and make us feel happy and pleasant and okay. And then, 2 a.m. we fall asleep and we start over the next day. So, yeah, it's quite a journey, this practice is. So, yeah, years ago there was a guy that after meditation, I do a lot of stuff in the community, and when I'm out there, I always lead just a 5-minute meditation practice. And that's it, because I always encourage people that whatever your meditation practice is, if you're not doing it every day, then you should really start. That's my suggestion. And so I always encourage people to do just 5 minutes. If I or anybody said you should sit 30-40 minutes twice a day, the likelihood of that is like 0. But if somebody shows up and says you should do this 5 minutes a day, then the likelihood of that goes up to 2%. So, which last I checked is better than 0%. So, it's a start. So anyways, I always encourage a 5-minute meditation practice if you don't have a daily practice. And years ago, this person after meditation, we did the 5-minute, I did my normal routine, they'd ask questions, things like that. And this guy shared that after 5 minutes of meditation, he felt the same way he did after a 3 or 4 hour bike ride, which is usually what he would do to kind of calm down, deal with stress and anxiety, and just to kind of get all his whatever out. And he would spend 3 or 4 hours riding a bike. And so he made this comparison of 5 minute meditation to 3 or 4 hours on a bike. And it's something that, for me as a practitioner, and I often reference this moment, but when I sit down here and, I join my palms and, everybody's kind of staring at me or up there and, you're all there and you're waiting for me to do something. And I'm just sitting here in my own little world and none of you are even there. And that's my moment of my 5 minutes or my 3 to 4 hour bike ride. That's my opportunity to say, this is it. This is the only thing that exists in this moment. That's all. Nothing else. Whatever was going on during the day, it's not happening right now. Whatever, problems you have to fix, whatever toilets don't work, whatever windows aren't put in yet, all that stuff, none of that is happening right now. All that's happening right now is I'm sitting here breathing with a bunch of people looking at me. That's it. And so for me as a practitioner, that's really what our lives are like every single day, is opportunities to show up no matter where you are. If you're going to school, show up to school and be present with school. If you're going to work, show up to work, be present with work. If you're going to have a conversation with a family member, friend, loved one, a stranger, just show up, be fully present with that conversation. So every moment, for those who are maybe new to Buddhism or meditation or this practice, every moment is an opportunity to just show up and be present with what's in front of you, which is very rare for a lot of us to do on a regular basis. Because what we tend to do is we tend to carry everything. Anyone ever been in a bad mood? Right? And you're in a bad mood and all of a sudden you show up to like interact with somebody. And what does that person then get to do? Interact with you and your bad mood. And they're so grateful for that. As I know you all love to interact with other people's bad moods. So that's an opportunity to really, whenever you're in a bad mood and you got a lot of stress, chaos, pressure, whatever it might be, if you're going to go interact with somebody, set that down. It's no different than you pick something up and you set it down. Bad example, because most people never set these things down. But I think you get my point. Don't be afraid to set things down. It's really important. And that will allow you to just be present with whatever's there. So with that, we'll start with the meditation practice. To those who are joining on YouTube, welcome. Nice to see you all. Actually, I can't see you, but glad you're here. Feel free to introduce yourself, chime in, say hello. We'll start with the meditation practice. For those who are maybe brand new or sitting for the first time, a couple things I'll tell you. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos, and this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all the chaos. Posture, you want to be comfortable. If you are on a cushion, often it helps slide into the front third. Pushing the stomach forward allows the back to straighten. If you're on a bench or chair, same thing. Just trying to sit up straight, relaxing the shoulders. Hands are on the knees or in the lap. If you need to move during meditation, simply move. Doesn't make you a bad meditator. Just means your leg hurts. Often people will be afraid to move because they're so worried about what the person next to them is thinking about their movement. It's a very common thing that's shared. It's like, okay, I'm sitting next to someone I know and love, or I'm sitting next to a stranger, and if I move during meditation, they might think I'm a bad meditator. Or they might think you just have an itch, So don't worry about movement. You're not trying to shut off your mind. You're not trying to think nothing. We're just going to sit and breathe. I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath, expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it, release that thought, return attention, focus to the breath. letting go of expectations, letting go of judgments from the practice, just sitting, breathing. Keeping the mind alert, aware of each sound, each thought, each physical sensation, yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds. And the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. And most important, with the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you'd prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means, very simply, for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's it. This practice is learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you've responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your day. So all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. It's not an easy practice. It's not necessarily fun. Meditation is not an escape, as often people might think it is, especially those who are new. It is direct perception into the present moment. And the present moment is incredibly difficult, very often. So it's not escaping from that moment. It's learning to see it for what it is, which is an impermanent experience. And learning to be with it as it arises. Watch it pass and move on. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice free. Sitting, breathing, learning to be kind to yourself and everybody else you encounter every moment of your life. That's it. So you just have to spend every single day for the rest of your life being nice to everyone you encounter. I mean, really, how hard is that? Look, for the last 37 minutes, how nice you've been to everybody in this room. These are the same strangers that you piss off all day long, that you're angry at, that you're frustrated at, that you're bothered by. These are the people on the road. These are the people taking care of you. These are the people doing your customer service. These are the people doing all your, projects. These people right here in this room are the same ones that frustrate you, irritate you, and annoy you outside these walls. This is what I call the facade of Buddhist practice. Or as I used to say, the namaste face. It's like, oh, namaste. You show up to yoga and everybody's got their gentle, pleasant, just be real. Don't allow this. Chogyam Trungpa is a beautiful Buddhist teacher, and he referred to it as spiritual materialism, which means many things, but in this context, what I'm referring to is don't allow the fact that there are walls around here that we refer to as a Buddhist place, and that there's yoga studios that you go to that are called yoga studios, or whatever spiritual, religious practice you have. Drop the walls. It's not about those places. It's about how you treat people all day long. And in that regard, I'm pretty sure most religious leaders over the last however many thousands of years have pretty much all said the same thing. But when we come to places like this, everyone's on their best behavior. It's the library effect. And 5 minutes after you leave, you're going to be back cutting people off on the freeway. I hate to judge anyone in this room. I'm just, we quickly lose this, whatever you're sitting with right now. It goes away. And that's why we practice it. So when we walk out these doors, that world out there that's coming at you 1,000 miles an hour and wants you to be a certain way and expects certain things of you and puts pressures on you and all that stuff that you're trying to live up to, that you can be this way out there. Otherwise, why even, what's the point? You know? I mean, so what if you've been able to accomplish being kind and quiet and nice for 40 minutes? What about the rest of your life? That's where it matters. You know? So I used to always joke and say, I hope someday we do these classes and nobody shows up. Because that means nobody needs this anymore. But I think it's going to be a minute before that happens. So we'll keep showing up. So I'll pause there. And for me, I really just prefer to respond to questions. Meditation, Buddhist practice, anything that you're sitting with. And again, welcome to everybody joining us online. There's a chat box there somewhere. Feel free, if you have any questions, to chime in there, and I'll do my best to respond. So we'll use the rest of our brief time tonight and open up to questions, thoughts, anything you're sitting with.
Continuing your theme that you're talking about right now, can you elaborate more on the 5-minute meditation?
Yeah. So there's this often, I think, perceived notion or idea, especially for those who are newer to practice. And by newer to practice, newer to meditation practice, that's probably 98% of the people in this room. Meaning you've been at it for a month, a year, 3 years. You go once a week, twice a week. You're lucky if you sit a couple times at home. You know, that's 98% of the people in this room. Right? There's a few that it's like they're really into it and it's their everyday life. And I talked last week about discipline. I think that was Saturday. But for most people, it's just something. And you know, like having a cup of coffee, which most of us have more coffee than we do meditation. So that's a terrible example, but you don't need 30, 40 minutes or an hour to sit quiet and breathe. You don't have 30, 40 minutes to an hour for most people, right? Where that came from is years ago, it's probably, you know, over the last 20 years, I used to lead like 40-minute meditation practices everywhere I went. And I was doing a nighttime. It was actually at Jewish Family Services, and I was working with their clinical staff, all their, you know, therapists, psychiatrists, psychologists, everything. And I remember it was like a 7:00 class, and I had been doing meditations all day. And there I am. I'm sitting down into a 40-minute meditation, and 20 minutes in, I'm falling asleep. And I'm leading the meditation. The beauty of it was I realized nobody would have known I was sleeping, so it didn't really matter. Plus, they were all probably asleep also. But I point that out because it was at that moment I was like, what am I doing? Like, I had this idea that meditation had to be this long amount of time. And let's be real, how long can you actually concentrate and focus on the present moment? 5 seconds, if you're lucky. Right? So I then shifted everything I was doing and sharing to doing just 5 minutes. And what I noticed in the, you know, and I would sit with thousands of people a year, that 5 minutes, it had the same impact on them as if it were an hour. But they were more likely to do it for just 5 minutes. But nothing, for the most part, that's not fair to say, most things around meditation in our Western culture, you know, there's a beautiful tree and it's along the ocean and there's some nun or monk in a robe and they're sitting in some uncomfortable position that most of you cannot sit in. And there's this idea, there's this facade, this image of what we think meditation is. And that is ruining it for most people. Because most people can't do that stuff. I mean, can you drive to the ocean every single day and sit under a tree and sit with your legs crossed like this in a robe?
But I can sit at my desk and just close my eyes.
Thank you very much. You can sit at your desk and close your eyes, and that's where we spend a majority of our time. Or wherever that desk, you know, situation is for everybody here. So every single day that you're at your desk, it doesn't have to be 5 minutes. It could be 3 minutes. It could be 2 minutes. It could just be 3 deep breaths before you start work. Or you ever sit at your desk and all of a sudden you get frustrated and pissed off? Does that happen every so often?
Yeah, push the chair back, close my eyes,
And take 3 deep breaths. That will drastically change what you do next. But what often gets kind of conditioned in many people's minds is like, let's say that that's at 1 o'clock. And then often people will think, well, I got 6 more hours before I can go to meditation. Or that they have to have it be an hour, or they have to have a whole setup at home. You can push yourself back from your desk, stop. 3 breaths. It'll make a huge difference on whatever you do next. That's all you need. Now, again, just to clarify for those who might be wrapped up in like long meditation practices, usually when I say things like this, there's somebody who's sitting there and they're like, well, I sit an hour a day and I go on all these retreats. That's wonderful. You don't need to stop that. I'm not suggesting that sitting an hour or 40 minutes or anything like that is bad or wrong or harmful. It's just not realistic for the average person who's just trying to calm down a little bit throughout their day. And especially for those who are brand new or newer to this practice, it's not realistic. Sitting longer periods of time, great. If you want to sit for 20 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour, beautiful. But very often people say, well, I was sitting for 7 minutes and I upped it to 10, and you can see like the ego that sparks, and the reality is very often they were just looking at their watch, waiting from the 7 to go to 10 so they can, so this isn't something you need to like get better at. You're just sitting and breathing. I'm not really sure how you can get better at that. You can get worse at it, which would be to stop breathing. And then you don't have to worry about meditation anymore anyways. So does that help?
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Other thoughts, questions? Yeah.
Can you elaborate on the 4 dukkhas, or what are they called?
The 4 Noble Truths?
The anger.
Greed, anger, ignorance? The 3 poisons? Yeah. Did you start asking that by saying, can I lightly touch on? To me, the way people ask questions tells a lot. So I'm very curious. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Lightly. Okay. I'll do it lightly. So to give it some context for those who might be brand new, the very first thing the Buddha ever taught was the 4 Noble Truths. I'll run through them in about 60 seconds, then you can just Google it. It's all there and it's free, right? The first thing he says is life is dukkha. Dukkha is very often translated as suffering. Pretty heavy word in the English language, but better translations I've found that most scholars and great teachers refer to as discomfort, angst, dissatisfaction. Something's just a little bit off, not so right. You got a sandwich, you hate mayonnaise, you get mayonnaise on it, that's dukkha. It's not going to kill you unless you're allergic to mayonnaise, but this is dukkha, discomfort. And our entire life is filled with moments of dukkha, right? It's what we get. Guaranteed for all of us, we're going to suffer to some degree throughout our day, okay? So that's what he says, the first thing. The second thing he says is, what's the cause? And that's what the question is about. The cause of our suffering, of our dukkha, is called the 3 poisons, often referred to as it. And it's greed, anger, and ignorance. I'll come back to those in a minute. The third one is the ending of suffering. Liberation, nirvana, cessation of suffering, freedom from suffering. Having a good day. All right? And the 4th Noble Truth is the Eightfold Path. And this is really the practice the Buddha laid out to live on a day-to-day basis. And that's having and working on correct views, thoughts, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, and concentration. Again, all of that on Google for free. Stay on the first couple pages of your Google search and you'll find some pretty decent stuff. And all a little bit different, which I think is important as well. To not think that like one Buddhist teacher has the absolute answer to the 4 Noble Truths of the Eightfold Path. Anything you read out there, they're all making it up. And unless you were sitting there 2,500 years ago listening to the Buddha himself, you really have no idea what he said. that everyone's just doing their best with it, right? So that's the Four Noble Truths. So the second one to the question, the three poisons, greed, anger, ignorance, is the cause of our suffering. People often add to their, pride, ego, attachment, things like that. But looking at greed, you have an iPhone? What number? Huh?
I don't.
You don't?
Samsung.
Damn. Terrible. Who has an iPhone? What number?
12.
Perfect. What did you have before 12?
A 10.
A 10. Oh my God.
10S Max.
10S and the Max too.
Yeah.
They suckered you into the Max, with like a free 5-month promotion or something. And did that one just all of a sudden you woke up one day and you're like, oh no, my 10S Max iPhone doesn't work anymore. I need the 12. Or did it work just fine?
No, I was suffering and crazy.
Thank you. You're making this easy. I appreciate it. So that's what happens. We have the 10S Max iPhone, and then Christmas hits, or any holiday, and here comes the 12, and that's the one we all need. This is greed, right? It doesn't mean you're a terrible person. We're pretty much all in the boat with you, right? But all day long, we are not comfortable with what we have, and we want more. You got 50 shirts. You don't need 50 shirts. You got 30 pairs of shoes. You don't need 30 pairs of shoes. We don't need all that, but we have it. And everything out there, billions of dollars a year, are billions and billions of dollars are spent telling us what we need, what we should wear, what we should look like, what we should eat, what iPhone we should have, what cars we should drive. All that stuff out there is telling us. And that creates greed because we're just unhappy in the present moment. I mean, if everyone just became happy, the economy would completely crash. But they don't have time for that right now, right? So we overcome the practice of greed with generosity. The first thing the Buddha taught, the most important piece, the word is dana. Doesn't mean money, the way most Buddhists ruin that word. It means generosity. And the Buddha taught very clearly the greatest form of dana, the greatest form of generosity that one can give is the practice of the Dharma, the teachings of the Buddha. And when I say that, I don't mean like standing on a street corner, like preaching the Dharma. I mean practicing loving kindness, compassion, forgiveness, joy, equanimity. Practicing these teachings of being kind to yourself and everybody else is the greatest form of dana that there is. That is the greatest thing you can give. We give people time. We give people attention. We give people a smile. We give people a hug. Right? There's a lot of things that we give. So we overcome greed with the practice of giving. Because we've all given whatever it may be to somebody. And when we do, we tend to feel better. And that tends to cut into our greed a little bit. Second one is anger. We're often angry at endless things. I mean, the list can go on and on and on. Angry about, 17 years ago, angry about the way my breakfast was served, angry about I didn't get enough pumps of whatever in my latte, just from like extreme, anger, hatred, to just minor little things. So constantly throughout our day, we have emotions of anger that arise from our perceptions of reality. I'll get to that in a minute. So we overcome anger with compassion. First, where must compassion start? Where do most people lack compassion? For themselves. I find that people can be so loving and compassionate and kind towards others, and then all of a sudden you got to look in the mirror and be kind to yourself, and most people don't know how to do that. It's really harsh. So having a sense of compassion towards yourself, right? I don't know if you've ever seen prayer wheels in Nepal, Tibet regions. You'll see the real large ones. They turn, they spin, and on there is a mantra, Kuan Yin, the statue in the middle. Her name means hearer of the world's cries. the Dalai Lama, they say, is the literal rebirth of the Bodhisattva enlightened being Kuan Yin, hearer of the world's cries. She hears all the suffering in the world and then pours out compassion to heal. Her mantra is Om Mani Padme Hum, which literally means jewel in the lotus. But that's the mantra, the prayer that's on prayer wheels. And so the idea is as you turn them, you're sending the prayer of compassion into the world, but it always starts by sending it to yourself first. So you have love and compassion towards yourself, and then you take that to others. Because if you have hatred and anger towards yourself, it's going to be really hard to have love and compassion for others. So we practice compassion on any level we can to overcome anger. And the third one is ignorance. Often you hear it referred to as delusions, right? And this really addresses, I like ignorance because I often follow that up by saying we're ignoring true nature of reality. Well, so then the question is, what is the true nature of reality? I don't know. But I know my perception of it isn't it. What I mean by that is what I see as occurring is only my perception of it. Thich Nhat Hanh, the great Vietnamese Buddhist monk who passed away recently, he said nirvana, freedom from suffering, is freedom from views. I think it's one of the most beautiful teachings I ever heard. Now, what that means is, to me, the way I interpreted that is that I have views, just as we all do. We all have views. But can I recognize that my view is only mine and everybody else has theirs? And yet we spend our entire lives trying to defend our view. Our perception of reality is what we spend our entire time defending and trying to share with people, when it's quite possible that maybe our perception isn't correct. So every conflict in the world, every conflict on a global scale, and every conflict in your immediate life with a family member, friend, loved one, whatever, is because you have different views about a situation. And if you can possibly open up your heart to the slight chance, and I hate to break it to you, that maybe your view is not correct, I'm sure not any of you in this room, but possibly, then that leaves room for other people's views to actually be heard. You don't have to like their view, you don't have to agree with their view, but it might help to try to understand their view. You want to make change, you might want to try to get to understand why people that you disagree with so much think what they think. So, tough to do. But greed, anger, ignorance, the three poisons. And so we overcome ignorance with wisdom. And the question often is, what is ultimate wisdom? I don't know, but I know what ignorance is. So I know when I'm ignoring reality and stuck in my own views. So if I can soften my view and open up my view, then I'm being less ignorant. And I'll take that as a baby step towards wisdom. Yeah. There's actually a teaching where one of the Buddhist disciples, Subhuti, he asked him to give a discourse, a talk on emptiness, which is really the ultimate practice of wisdom. And Subhuti sat down and said nothing. And the Buddha praised him and said, "Good job." So as soon as we speak and try to describe something, we're missing it. You take a bite of pizza and you try to explain it, your explanation of it is not it. It's just your expression of that experience. So does that help? Lightly? There's a question here. Will the temple be open on Christmas Eve? Yes. It'll be whatever night that is. Our schedule doesn't change, I guess is the best way to answer that. So whatever class we have, I don't know what day Christmas Eve is, but whatever. Sunday, yeah. Our schedule is the same regardless of the holidays. So yeah. But actually, is it Sunday? It's a Sunday. So we don't have a Sunday night class. But maybe we'll do one on Christmas Eve. So stay tuned. Yeah. Other questions? Or I should say we don't have a Sunday night class in person. We have a Zoom Tonglen practice on Sunday nights. Yeah, I think I see a hand. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just curious, would the Buddha say that like a lot of suffering, well, some of the suffering that we get is our attachment to things, like my attachment to like my animals or my mother or my
Mhm.
friends, like if somebody dies, I have this great suffering.
Mhm.
Or my something's not working out at work, I have this great suffering. But then the attachment to my ego is like, you cut me off on the freeway, I'm deeply offended. It's my attachment to my ego. Would the Buddha say that that's all like on a playing field or on a plane, that it's all the same, it's just attachment that's inappropriate, or not inappropriate, but just out of parameters, maybe?
Great question. And I love the fact that you corrected yourself, because I was going to lightly jump all over inappropriate. Because, the Buddha's teaching, again, and very seriously, because every time we do this, there's always people brand new. So the Buddha was not saying this is appropriate or inappropriate, just to clarify that. But I'm glad you clarified that, by saying out of the parameter. What he was saying is that try these things. And I'll get to the attachment part in a minute, but try these things, meaning try being kind to people. If it works, great, right? Try cutting through craving and desire. See if you're happier. If it works, great. You're not like going to Buddhist hell because you have some attachment to something. But your question is around attachment, suffering. All of our suffering comes from our attachments, regardless of the scale of it. It all starts, the greatest form of attachment. I mean, in your question, you actually gave the answer. I don't know if you realize that, but in your question, you actually gave the answer that the greatest form of attachment is our attachment to ourself and our ego, which you said. And because we have this attachment to ourselves and our ego, and we tend to think the entire world revolves around us. I mean, did you wake up this morning at some point, realize you were hungry? Yeah. And when you realized you were hungry, you said, I'm going to get something to eat? Okay. At any point through that, did you recognize that maybe somebody else is hungry? Or did you just think, I'm hungry, I'm going to eat? Pretty much works that way. So our entire life is that. We don't wake up and our first thought is not, what does the rest of the world need? Most people's first thoughts are, what do I need? And then we go from there. And because we're attached to outcomes, we're attached to what other people say and do, we're attached to, wanting people to drive a certain way on the freeway, which to me is still just the most ridiculous thing. Every one of us in this room, if you drive, I'm sure at some point in time, has probably done something on the road that wasn't so kind or wise or safe. And yet, God forbid, somebody else gets in front of us and we want to chase them down for 7 miles. You don't even know them. You don't know anything about them. And all of a sudden you have this hatred towards the Chevy on the road. So it is laughable, for me, that was because I grew up angry at everything and everyone, and so entitled and so driven by my ego and so driven by I am the most important person. Forget it. So I know that life intimately for many, many years. And it's to me, the reason I kind of say it's laughable is it'll really help if you can begin to laugh at yourself for being able to see how foolish some of those things are. Truly. Like how ridiculously upset we get at things that mean absolutely nothing. Like the car that got in front of you on the freeway. And all of a sudden the next hour of your life is ruined. And then you have to tweet about it, post about it, share it, tell everybody about it. Because everyone wants to know how miserable your life is now that somebody cut you off on the freeway. Now you've taken your misery and dropped it on everybody else for another hour. All because we're attached to I am most important. So, yes. I wouldn't even say to answer your question, but to confirm everything you said, My understanding of the Buddhist teachings is that it is our attachment to our ego, and everything stems from there. And because the world doesn't operate how we want it to, we suffer. And once you can begin to recognize that the world is never, ever going to operate how you want it to, and you let go of that attachment, your life will go much smoother because you're not wrapped up in everybody else's crap. You know, we got enough of our own problems to work through and deal with, let alone try to solve why everybody cuts us off on the freeway that you don't know and you'll never see again. So, does that help? Yeah. All right, so I'm going to close on that. We'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to those who need it most. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. So before you all head out, our host Carly has a few announcements for everybody.
Hi, I'm Carly. I'm your host for tonight. We opened the Dharma Bum Temple 15 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those who lead are not nuns, monks, gurus, masters, or teachers, and are not looking for students. They're simply practitioners sharing their interpretations of practice with others. Almost every night we have different classes led by people from various Buddhist traditions. We have a recovery sangha that meets several times a week for anyone battling addiction. A family sangha for parents, kids, toddlers, and teens, which meets third Saturday of the month, RSVP required, and a half-day silent retreat the first Saturday of the month. Everything we offer here is always free. The full schedule is on the website and posted in the entryway above the shoe rack. We also have a lending library. If you see a book you like, feel free to borrow it and bring it back whenever you're done with it. And if you could straighten your cushions before you head out tonight, I'd greatly appreciate it because then I don't have to straighten your cushion. Thank you for being here. We wish you well and hope to see you all again.
Thanks, Carly. And the last thing that's not on there is New Year's. This will be our 17th annual, believe it or not. I cannot believe it's been 17 years, but our 17th annual Dharma Bum New Year's celebration. So if you've never done a silent and sober New Year's Eve, this is your chance to do both of them, and I promise you will survive. We gather at 7 o'clock, do a potluck downstairs. 9 o'clock, I'll do some version of the history of the Dharma Bum Temple. And then about 11:30, we pile in here and we'll do about a 20-minute silent meditation. So the whole night is not silent, just the last 20-minute meditation. Some people come at 7 and they're home and in bed by 9 o'clock. Some people come at 9. Some people come at 11:30 just for meditation. So you're welcome to drop in at any point in the evening. But it's really cool just to kind of go into the midnight and the new year. When we were downtown in the gas lamp, it was fun because everybody was like exploding and wild and crazy. And it was really easy to know it was midnight. Here, the first couple of years, I was like, is it midnight? Yeah, because everybody around here is asleep by 11 o'clock. So thank you all for being here. Good luck. Thanks, Carly.